Okay, we're live.
Okay, good morning. I'm Elaine Chapnick, President of the Larchmont Mamaroneck Local Summit, welcoming you to our October meeting. We pride ourselves in being a caring community, and today we'll hear from one of the most caring groups among us, the Community Resource Center. Having lost the use of their building a year ago in Hurricane Ida, we will learn how they nevertheless helped the community during that time, how they continued to meet their clients' needs, and how they plan to rebuild for the future. First, we'll hear from Executive Director Durandy Martinez, then Deputy Executive Director Luis Zarate, then Board Member Leonard Aubry, and last, Director of Development Nicole Tuck. Okay, Durandy, you want to begin?
Thank you so much, Elaine. It's such a pleasure to be here with the Larchmont Mamaroneck Local Summit. It's been a long road for CRC, and I'm very excited to be back here with you and tell you a little bit more about what we're doing at the Community Resource Center. Next slide, please. In light of Hurricane Ian, we remember our community's destruction as we pray for those down south. Next slide, please. In the late evening hours of September 1st, 2021, waters from Hurricane Ida swept through Mamaroneck. We had 1,000 people displaced, 535 homes were flooded, 310 cars were lost in the flood, and several buildings were condemned for safety concerns. All of this costing $18 million in losses alone in the first week. And I just want to say that this was the day before Community Resource Center was getting ready to return back to our center full-time in person as we prepared to come back to classes in person, obviously after the hurricane, the pandemic, where we were gone for about a year and a half, and all of our students were really excited to return to in-person classes and just get back to in-person job training. And then Hurricane Ida floods Mamaroneck, and to this day, the Community Resource Center is still displaced. These are photos of the 14 feet of water that we received in our main building and what it looks like now. Next slide, please. So for the first 6 months, we were so focused on supporting the 300 families that were immediately in need after the hurricane. We helped 284 families with financial emergency assistance between $500 and $5,000 per family, depending on the need. We worked with our Coalition for Community to get folks food and clothing and mental health services. And then of those 284 families, 80 families remained displaced for more than 5 months. And obviously the Village of Mamaroneck was very collaborative with us. And then Westchester County also stepped in to support families for long-term displacement at the Sonesta Hotel. Community Resource Center worked with the New Rochelle College of Monroe to support families that did need long-term temporary housing. And actually families did stay all the way up until September of this year. So it took between 8 months to 12 months to relocate families fully. And unfortunately, we did have to have families relocate outside of Mamaroneck, even when they didn't want to, because of the cost of living in Mamaroneck, especially after such a terrible natural disaster. So some families moved to New Rochelle, Portchester, Harrison, White Plains, Yonkers, Mount Vernon, Poughkeepsie, and even as far as Stamford. 150 families are still reporting need after the loss of their vehicles, their rent increases because property owners were renovating their apartments. And we do see a lot of families struggling to pay the increase between $200 and $500 a month for their rent. So along with relocating families and making sure that people have emergency assistance to support themselves and help to rebuild their lives, we're also doing a lot of advocacy work with the New York Storm Disaster Recovery, our governor's office, and local and state officials, letting them know that families are still struggling after a year of Hurricane Ida. Next slide, please. On behalf of the community, obviously, like, these are all families. They make up part of our community and they go to school with our kids. We're all part of a community. And Briseida Alvarez, who's one of the families that we supported, did want to thank everyone listening on this call, because I know we're such a tight-knit community. Folks donated to that emergency assistance fund. They donated clothes and toiletries and supported with food donations. And we do want to thank you all for being a part of Community Resource Center emergency response and just supporting all of the folks that we did in Mamaroneck and Larchmont. Next slide, please. I do want to say that CRC did have to work really hard to implement a crisis response team. Of course, because so many families were displaced, but also because many of the community members that CRC serves are either mixed status and living in different immigration statuses in their homes, or are undocumented and are definitely have a difficult time applying for emergency supports, like from FEMA, federal monies, state monies. And these were folks that we certainly prioritized because they are the most in need. Families that live in basement apartments live there because it's the only thing that they can afford. And these were the people that lost absolutely everything in the flood and then had a difficult time applying for FEMA support. Of course, we're very thankful that FEMA set up a space at the Village Courthouse with the support of the Coalition for Community and the Village of Mamaroneck and the Mamaroneck Library. It was really important to have that FEMA set up and for Community Resource Center to be designated a natural disaster zone. But a lot of families struggled to apply for that assistance, and that's what our case managers are dedicated to support with. So I'm going to pass it over to our Deputy Executive Director, Luis Zarate, who's going to talk a little bit about the challenges that we're seeing and how we're reinventing ourselves even a year later as we struggle with continuing to be displaced.
Good morning, everyone. Elaine, LMC, thank you for having us. Today, CRC as it stands today, we're still facing navigating through new challenges and trying to still provide the programs that we've been providing along the years. And but we couldn't do this without the help of our community partners. St. Thomas Episcopal Church has been a key partner for us as our staff, and we have staggered schedules as we are trying to share the space that we have, and in order for us to provide all the services that we currently offer, such as our legal services, our case management team, also our Worker Center team is located right now at St. Thomas Episcopal Church. But also we couldn't have done it without Hunger Task Force Food Pantry, Mamaroneck Avenue School, Mamaroneck Public Library, STEM Alliance, and St. Gabriel's Church in New Rochelle. At the Hunger Task Force Food Pantry, we were able to provide OSHA trainings, We also had a team boutique back in April of last year, given that because we didn't have the space, we started looking into our partners to provide that for us in order for us to keep running our programs. At Mamaroneck Avenue School, we were able to have the Council of Guatemala, and they were able to provide the space for us, for the community to be served and to get all the documentation they needed. Same with the Mamaroneck Public Library, we have different programs running there. And we've been working closely with them in trying to attain this. The same goes with the STEM Alliance, as we're still trying to provide the digital training, and we're working in conjunction with them to make this possible, among other initiatives. At St. Gabriel's Church, we were able to provide part of our nanny training, given that a component of it has to be in person, which is the CPR portion of it. So we were able to include St. Gabriel's among other programs and trainings that are happening there. So we thank our community partners for hosting us and to allow us to continue our job, even though we are displaced. One thing, I guess one of the biggest challenges we've faced is the privacy issue that our clients face when they come to visit us at St. Patrick's, for instance. And it's not because of the lack of a space, but it's just because we have more people coming to visit us, and then our clients sometimes feel the need that they need more privacy, either on the legal setting, which they have to express their challenges and their cases, would they need to be very confidential. As well, we have a lot of domestic violence community members that come to us, and we need that setting, the privacy, and they don't want to be seen, or they don't want to recognize in this instance. And the same goes for some of our community members who are taking literacy classes. And they feel like if they are in a setting which more people are coming in and out, they cannot learn the best way possible. So when we were at CRC, at our space, we were able to provide that very private, confidential space in which they had their own dedicated space to provide all of these services. And right now, currently, we cannot do that. We had to adapt. We've tried to do our best, but we're trying to get back home, and that's our focus right now. We want to share with Rocio. She's our worker center supervisor, and these are her words. She was saying that she is very grateful to our partners for the Bauer space, but the challenges of not having our center are so vast is more than not having a private space for our domestic violence clients and their case managers. She mentioned that she stays there Friday evenings past 5 p.m. So our adult literacy students, they can come in on one-for-one sessions because they struggle to understand it via Zoom, and they feel a bit embarrassed because they're learning to read and write as adults. So they prefer to come to the center when there are no staff or clients are in our rented space. And she is able to make that accommodation to meet the needs of these community members. They miss their private classrooms where they can learn together and build community and at the center too. The challenges that we face, as I mentioned a little bit before, is that little to no private space for clients who need confidentiality, domestic violence victims, immigration cases, adults with literacy needs, wage theft cases, which can be, and they're treated in a very confidential manner as well. The lack of a space for programs like couples with childcare, for educational programs like high school equivalency. The other challenge that some of our community members have expressed, given that our center at Center Avenue is in the middle of our communities, the location where we're at right now is a bit removed from where the community lives. And the trust factor. I think they saw Center Avenue and CRC, our main place as a place where they can just come in. They know it. They've seen us there for the last 20, 24 years. So they understand that we're always there for them. Right now, when they come into a new space, they're still trying to really get acquainted with it. And it's a little bit hard for some of them to really come into a new space. This is a chart on the impact of our programs and services. Obviously, when we were at the center, we were able to have a different, a variety of the programs having a physical place in there. Right now, we are trying to provide more of a digital training, and sometimes the lack of I guess the difficulty that some of our clients have in managing the digital equipment is a challenge for some of the programs, but we're trying to meet them where they are, and we're trying to find, trying to find our partners if they can provide some space so we can work with them. As you can see, some of the programs we can offer, some we cannot, and I think we're going slowly but surely into in-person trainings, which is something that our community, and especially all of our ESL classes, they want that face-to-face with the teacher, be able to ask and be able to be shown on a piece of paper or on a book, what the next steps are and what. So we are getting there. And this is, again, this is one of our ESL classes. This is what CRC looked before IDA hit, even pre-COVID. And we still have some of the numbers, but some of the faces that we've seen for some students that they're not able to come back. But that's not to say, though, that it's somewhat convenient for some of our community members. Some of our students like the Zoom approach because it's very convenient for them. They don't have to come to the center, but for some of them, we still have. So I would say it's half the amount of people that prefer an in-person compared to a remote class. Now I'm going to pass it on to Leonard Aubrey. He's our board member.
Oh, thank you, Luis. Good morning, everyone. We formed shortly after IDA, and shortly after, quite frankly, the staff, as Durandy pointed out, had to deal with the immediacy of the impact on our community, or the immediate impact on our community, started working on the emergency assistance and so on. A small group of us, 4 board members, plus Durandy and Luis, got together to decide how we were going to go forward. Now, before I go further, I want to thank the other members of what we're calling our rebuild committee. First, is someone I believe all of you know, is Nino Resioketti. Nina was joining us this morning, but unfortunately had a fall and was not feeling well. And I think we hope she's feeling much better today, and hope that she's watching us. Also is board chair Carol Pucci, board member John Farris, myself, Durandy, and Luis. So we've formed a real cohesive team. Now, one thing I want to point out before I go further on this slide in particular, and I'll go into a little more detail later. Obviously, part of our rebuild, a major component of our rebuild, is flood mitigation. And how do we limit, minimize, eliminate the damage from future flooding? Now, those of you who are familiar with the center I'm not sure if you can point this, Luis, where the front door currently is. You see where Luis is pointing now between those two people. The front entrance to the building, the main building on Center Avenue, is right there, right at ground level, which was a major entry point for the water on September 1st of 21. One thing we're doing is we're elevating the main entrance to the first floor level, that new door and stairway, which is a couple of feet above what's called the base flood elevation, which is the required amount above the base flood elevation in the village. So that's a new entrance there that we plan to install. Next slide, Louise. When we started this exercise shortly after the flood, we, in talking to community members among ourselves, village officials, and so on, we wanted to establish several project priorities before we really embarked on a lot of the details. Obviously, as you've heard from both Luis and Durandy, we wanted to ensure easy access to our facilities by our clients. And as most of you know, I'm sure, the overwhelming majority of whom come from Mamaroneck and in the nearby community. So we felt having close proximity to our primary communities that we serve is important. Secondly, is making sure we have enough space for programs that we're growing and some of the new initiatives that we're planning for the future. Now, many of you may know that Head Start and the food pantry occupied the facility that we occupy. Head Start will no longer be located there, and the food pantry, many of you know also, I assume, is located on Mamaroneck Avenue heading toward Barry Avenue. And that took a lot of time to work through. And we were uncertain about the space, the amount of space available to the CRC at that site, at our site. And for a variety of reasons, Head Start decided to relocate, and the food pantry also moved. So from a space point of view, we're in pretty good shape now. The same number of people coming to our center will likely not change much. When I say coming to our center, I mean including Head Start and the food pantry. So that was an important development that evolved over time after the flood. Thirdly, of course, the plan must be affordable and provide us protection from future flooding. So those are sort of the three project priorities. Next slide. From there, we said, okay, we're in a flood zone, and would we be better off by looking at other facilities or other options? And what are the three basic options? Obviously, we could sell the Center Avenue buildings and relocate, or occupy space, stay in a part of the Center Avenue location and move out of the basement of that location and lease space at an alternative location. We could raise the building above the base flood elevation level, or add a second floor on the building, or we could maximize the flood protection for our existing facilities at the current site. We decided after a real estate broker looked at the various site alternatives, we decided after we had our architect talk to us and do cost estimate for elevating the building and adding a second floor, and also related regulatory issues and neighbor questions, We decided to maximize the flood protection for our existing buildings, as you may know, at the current site. So we said, let's just stick where we are and proceed designing the best possible spaces that protects us from the flooding and also serves our program needs. Next slide, Louise. Okay, so we're talking about your support, and I think you'll hear from Nicole how important everyone's support is in us investing in the future of the center. Because as I think everyone also may know, is that we really don't charge for our services, or the overwhelming majority of them, and we must raise $1 million, $1.5 million every year to keep the center operational. So that's an important thing to understand. Now we must raise additional money to pay for the rebuild. So we're going to commit to preparing the facilities or mitigating the potential flooding in the future of our facilities by doing a number of things. And I won't go into a lot of details now unless there's some additional, some questions, but like the entrance that I shared with you on the first slide, we're going to move all of the mechanicals, the emergency generator, well above the base flood elevation. In fact, we're planning to do a walkway between the two buildings, the worker center, which is about 25 or so feet from the main building. And we'll do a walkway which will be covered, and we'll locate our mechanicals above on the roof of that walkway. So it'll be well protected from the flooding. We will be rebuilding the basement entirely, which was one of the first pictures that Durandy showed you, using materials recommended by FEMA to provide the maximum flood mitigation. And also in that basement, which is about 3,600 square feet, in that basement, operationally, we're not going to do as we did previously, meaning have sort of permanent offices, files, and because one of the unfortunate events from the flood is that we lost paper files that were, many of which were confidential documents. And we're not going to do that going forward. It's going to be a space with furniture for programs and classes, meeting rooms, and space for our staff who are there, for a period of time, sort of acting as hotel offices in that basement. That's an important space for us. It's 50% of the building. And we're going to maximize the flood protection. We're going to be careful about how we operate there. And one other thing we're doing, which was also a significant source of water from Ida, was we're going to block the 7 basement windows on the side of the basement level. So that's a few of the things that we're planning to do. So when we talked about Durandy earlier, and I mentioned about our programs and enhancing them, there's a commercial kitchen in the main building, which was used on and off by the Head Start folks. And we're going to make a small investment as part of this project in that kitchen to provide some restaurant culinary training because many of our clients work in local restaurants, and we're trying to make more of them, have a clearer understanding of food preparation and cleanliness and so on. Then, as Durandy and Luis mentioned, our partnerships are important and will continue. Now, an important element of this, not necessarily caused by the flooding, was in our worker center. Again, that's a building that's across or parallel to the main building, about 1,700 square feet. And that's a largely open space now that has no plumbing, no bathrooms, which has created problems for our clients. On many occasions, they would have to go, especially in inclement weather, outside and then down into the basement level of the main building, and difficult, especially those who had children with them. Now, also as part of this, there will be sinks, of course, and as is noted here, people can wash their hands and be clean, clean their hands when necessary when eating food, and it also is part of the COVID-19 precautions. So this investment in the Worker Center has been discussed for many years, and we are going to proceed with that at the same time. Next slide, Luis. Okay, so we're talking about a total project cost of about 1.7 million, although I'm a little more cautious in saying we're probably between 1.7 and 2 million, simply because, again, as most of you probably know, once again, is that we've got the supply chain issues and the escalation or inflation in costs that could and have been prevalent in the construction industry recently. So we have to be very cautious about that. But we stand right now at between 1.7 and 2 million, which requires us to raise somewhere between, let's say 700 to, $1 million from fundraising. And this chart here shows you that we have about 936,000 already committed through various funding sources, and another 765 at a minimum still needed. Next slide, please. And here's a breakdown of the committed sources. And you can see we've got about 5 or so sources here. Individual donors, restricted funds that we had available, government grants and loans. We did receive an approval from through FEMA from the Small Business Administration for a very low interest loan to contribute to this project or use for this project. We had a small amount of flood insurance money come through, and then others are foundations and community organizations. Next slide, Luis. Okay, so next is Nicole Tuck, who's our relatively new, although she's been working like crazy, Director of Development. So Nicole, please take it over.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. So to tag on to what Len was saying with our fundraising, we are going to have our annual gala on Thursday, November 17th. This year, we will be honoring Tammy Burks and St. Thomas Episcopal Church for giving us a home and everything that they've done to support our community. All the proceeds from the gala are going to go to rebuild our center at 134 Center Avenue. So we would love if everyone would consider joining us for an evening of dinner and dancing, just to celebrate everything that we have been able to accomplish in 2022 while being displaced. You can go to our website, which is crcny.org, for more details and to purchase tickets. And I will say that Durandy, Luis, Len, myself, everyone at CRC is always there. There are other opportunities at various levels to support our rebuild with ongoing campaigns. Feel free to reach out to us to talk further to help get us back to our center. Thank you.
Thank you. We now have an opportunity for questions from the audience. I've got a few to start off. I wanted to know what plans you have for disability access. I noticed in the front door, I didn't see any ramp or other way that you could get into the center if you had a stroller with children or any other personal disability in order to enter. What plans are there for that?
Oh, sure. So we have a rendering, but obviously we had to keep the presentation tight, which shows both buildings. Now, because of the small amount of space we have in front of the buildings, and because of the requirement of the ADA requirement about how much ramp space is required to get up a certain distance, we initially thought about a ramp. Then our architect suggested something that's being used a fair amount now in New York City is, I'll call it a lift. It's like you drive, let's say a woman with a stroller or someone with a stroller or in a wheelchair can sort of go into this. That's it right there. Yeah, it's right there. It's much, and you go into it. It's then it raises up to the level that you desire.
I see.
So that's an elegant solution, because then you're at the appropriate levels,
right,
for both buildings. Now, if you want to go down to the basement level in the main building, which is to the right, there's a what's called a LULA, limited use, limited access elevator. It's a very simple, it's a lift. And we have a LULA which is going to be moved, so it'll be proximate to someone coming into the building from the side.
Okay.
So so that's how we're handling that situation.
And also, is there any parking? Is there an access for customers that want to hire the workers, for example? Would there be parking areas for those kind of people?
Well, obviously, I think everyone knows Center Avenue is not a great space for parking. And what we're going to do is, you notice on this is there's no fence in front of this rendering. There's currently a fence there now. So we're removing that fence. We're going to place a fence at about the first blue level where the handicapped, I'll call it lift, is located. And in case we have children who are still going to play in that space, there's currently a little play area there now. And the front part will be enough space for about 4 cars at the maximum. So, and that's still something we're working, we have to deal with as we work on the site. Because there are other site issues that we have to deal with in terms of drainage and so on. There are a number of exterior improvements we're making as a result of this project, purely from a flood mitigation perspective.
And lastly, have you been working, I assume you've been working closely with the village planning and zoning and building committees
Well, what we've been doing is Durandy and I have met twice with the building inspector, Frank Tavalacci, with Jerry Barbario, and with Tom Murphy. And we met with them recently. I don't know, Durandy, a week or two ago, something like that.
Yep, just last week.
Yeah. We met with them and shared with them, our architect was with us, and shared with them the designs for the buildings. And that's a crucial step, obviously, because we have to determine what regulatory process we have to go through. And they felt, one of the key things here is this is primarily an interior renovation and flood mitigation effort. And right now, we have to go through the building permit process and so on, but we're not going to have to, based on what was said, go through the boards, except for the Board of Architectural Review. So that's where we stand, at least right now.
Okay.
And just to close the loop on that is, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the design process, but we haven't reached, let's say, what's called 100% of construction documents, which are the documents that are bid out, okay, to contractors. The cost estimates that we had 3 of them, one from a local contractor. So we have, some confidence in the costs, but we were cautioned by everyone to be, including those who did the cost estimates, to be careful. And anyone who's done a project, I guess, at your home knows that somehow it turns out to be more expensive than you originally anticipated. And that's why I think we all tend to be cautious in that respect.
Are there any other questions from our audience? You can raise your hand, and I guess you'll be called on. I'll ask LMC to identify the people. I can't seem to see them here on mine.
Hi, good morning. We have John Philip Oldham as a question. If you open up your mic, please.
If you can hear me now.
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
Are you still pursuing the insurance money limit? Or if you press for every last dollar out of insurance potential?
Thank
or is
you,
that
Phil.
still in process?
Thank you, Phil, for that question. It's a good question. And I see some people think that it's extremely low, and it is. It is very low. And we actually just got an email from one of our former board members who will be supporting and continuing to pressure for that insurance limit. But it is low. And I think that's one of the things we learned from Ida is that insurance companies are not paying as much as we would hope, and not just for Community Resource Center, but also many of the local businesses that were so impacted by the flood. But this is something that we're certainly pursuing and considering as we move forward. Len, I don't know if you want to add anything.
Yeah, no, I think that covers it. I mean, it's just very frustrating that FEMA would not, acknowledge the costs incurred, or the cost that we will incur to fix up the space. But they've been typically difficult. So.
Yes, and just from an advocacy perspective, we actually have had walkthroughs with our local state senator, Shelley Mayer, and insurance leaders talking about, the fact that really needs to change.
Good.
Any other questions?
Okay, we have Westchester County Executive George Latimer has a question for you.
Great. George, unmute. There we go. Okay. George, you're on. Hello? George, come through.
Maybe he may have had to step out, but I did see him making a comment before about pursuing maybe some county funding, and that we should connect with his team about that. And I'm very grateful to our
Yeah.
county executive for that support. Is that him?
Yeah, he's not there. He's not.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I'm making a note to absolutely contact George and his team for that support.
Yeah.
They've been incredible from the very first day of this flood, obviously helping us host so many families at the White Plains Sonesta Hotel, and we will absolutely be calling his office.
Great.
Oh, thank you, George. Yes.
Anyone else? Any other questions?
We have Larry Thal has a question.
Okay, Larry? Unmute, Larry. Unmute. You're still on mute. Larry, unmute. There we go.
Gotcha. There we go. Thank you. So I'm just wondering whether there's been some coordination with different organizations in our area who center on immigration and asylum. And I would, whenever you put out, Nicole, you know this, you got to spread out the word about your gala in November. I think that these other organizations should be informed because they'll definitely support and spread the word.
Yes, thank you, Larry. I really appreciate your question about new migrants or asylum seekers that we're seeing in Westchester County. We are working with Neighbors for Refugees and Alianza Laboral, which is a coalition of different worker centers across the county, to support migrant families that are making their way up to New York State, some not by choice, but certainly because of need, and do need support with English classes, job training. These are folks that are professionals in their own countries and are just really needing to be able to self-sustain for the next few months while they wait for their asylum process to unfold. And sometimes that can take about 6 months to a year, if not more. And certainly families are wanting their work authorization so that they can just be self-reliant. But Community Resource Center is prepared with our legal services, our case managers to help these families, and certainly our programs and workforce development that will help them get job training and to work locally. So if anyone is in need of a hired working hand, please do contact Community Resource Center. And thank you, Larry. We absolutely are working with our community partners to support the families that we have already in our community, certainly the families that are new migrants in our community. And part of the annual fundraiser, which is our biggest annual fundraiser, is so that we can keep helping all of these community members and return home. And obviously, returning home is the biggest piece of helping people. We want to have a center where people can learn together and be a part of a community. And that's why Community Resource Centers rebuild is so critical. And certainly we want to have our doors open for these asylum seekers that have gone through so much to get here.
Well, thank you so much for all of your dedication, and this coordination is great to transfer the goodwill into action. So thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
We have two questions in the chat. Actually, one, Carolyn Berenbaum. How are you handling the heating and cooling?
Well, we'll be getting sort of newer, brand new, not newer or new, brand new heating and cooling packs that we will place on the covered walkway between the buildings. So that will be, both connected, obviously electronically and otherwise, with both buildings, because in the worker center as well as in the main building, we had our heating and cooling units destroyed by the flood because they were both at the basement level. So we're putting totally new units and we're raising them well above the flood level, the flood elevation, base flood elevation.
I have a quick question. I know this may seem crazy to even try to answer, but I was just curious whether there's an estimate of how long it would take to actually construct this once shovels start entering the ground. Is there any estimate?
That's actually a good question, one we all are anxious to answer. But you know, if I were to make a guess, I would say 10 months. But then there's lots of assumptions there about supply chain elements and so on, because we've heard again from our architect, they were working on a project in which they ordered a particular set of doors, mind you, not huge warehouse or garage, doors for a home, similar doors. And they had to wait, normally, you know, a week or so, they had to wait months to be able to get such deliveries.
So what we're hearing is that you're going to be in this facility for the next couple of years, really, until you can re-enter your.
Well, our obvious goal is to be in the renovated CRC in 2023. So clearly, if we start building early next year, okay.
Yeah.
And again, we make assumptions about village approvals, which, as you know, could take some time. So that's what we're looking at, 2023. And I can assure you, there is a great deal of, let's say, I don't want to say anxiousness, but certainly enthusiasm and energy to make that happen on a timely basis, because quite frankly, this has been going on for much too long, and the staff and everyone has done such a great job in being able to do what we've been able to do since Ida. So
Anything else?
And if I could just add that we're so thankful to St. Thomas Church for being such gracious hosts to us. This has been a 13-month-long process, and we will be around for a little longer if they'll have us. And please help us honor St. Thomas Church and Tammy Burks for her incredible leadership. We will be honoring her on November 17th, and we're so grateful. Community Resource Center doesn't exist without partnerships and the donor community and our clients, and we're very grateful to be a part of the Mamaroneck Larchmont community. I don't think I would have seen such everyone come together as they did in this last year. So thank you.
Can you tell us where the gala will be located?
It will be at Beach Point Club on November 17th at 6 p.m.
Great. Any other questions?
We have a hand up from Nadia B. Glick.
Oh, Nada Glick.
Nada, excuse me.
Yeah, Nada, unmute. Nada, where are you? There you are. Unmute, Nada.
My only question was the one about where the gala was going to be. I will be there. And
Well, thank you, Nada.
Great.
some other ideas for programs that you don't have yet, but maybe they have to wait till you're back in your home, but I will talk to Durandy.
Thank you. We're always so excited to hear about other ideas folks have, and certainly volunteer opportunities.
Right.
We're always really excited to talk about that. I'm happy to connect with you, Nita.
And the other thing is, because I am a career counselor with years and years of experience at Westchester Community College and whatever, I'm happy to talk to you about doing that, even when you're in temporary quarters.
100%. That is something we can work on together in temporary quarters. And certainly for younger individuals and the new families that are coming up and have professional careers and want to continue them in this country.
Great. We'll be talking.
Thank you.
Thank you, man.
Any other questions? And perhaps it's time to wrap up. I want to thank our speakers, Nicole, Luis, Durandy, Len. It's been very enlightening. We're all very excited about the plans. We hope that they come together quickly so you can relocate quickly, but we all are grateful for the good work you do for our community. So thank you. And thank you all for attending. I hope to see all of you next month for our November program. That will be on November 8th. I know that's election day, but we think you can take 1 hour out of that wonderful day, important day, and do your civic duty either before or after our meeting, which will be devoted to the issues of mental health in our schools and how we're managing that. So hope to see you next month, and thank you all for attending today. Have a good day.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, LMC
everyone.
Media, for making
Thank
this
you very much.
possible as well.
And thank you, LMC, for co-hosting us as well. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.